Hey, what's up guys? MTG Tournament Grinder here, and I'll be honest, this game is miserable. Rather, this particular game 1 of this match, on a mold to 5, a scry to the bottom. I want to say that I can remember keeping a 0 lander. I probably should have just gone to 4. But I knew what my opponent was on. I've played him before. I knew he was on Jund. And a mold of 4 just sounds like a nail in the coffin. I felt like I had to show you guys this, just for full disclosure, but this is probably one of the worst game 1s I've had with this deck so far. So let's sideboard against Jund and hope for better times in game 2. Just gotta shake that one off. As for the sideboarding, I brought in 2 copies of Surgical Extraction. So against a deck that is literally full of removal, it allows me to get rid of some of it, but more importantly, it allows me to see his hand and just check for removal, see what's there now. This helps me pick the right time to go for my big swing. If I'm planning on sacking my whole board to an Inkmoth Nexus or something equally risky, it helps to know that he doesn't have an instant speed removal spell in his hand. So I can look at their hand, see what they've got first, and then feel confident about swinging for the win. Now, the only other relevant card was 2 copies of Dismember. It's the only removal I have for big creatures like Goyf, Skoos, potentially Tireless Tracker. There's a chance that I'll be able to make creatures that big if I have Hardened Scales and I get to untap with a Steel Overseer and everything goes right, but I can't even hope to have a 5/6 on board as early as Jund can have one with a good Tarmogoyf. So some legit removal is pretty important. And because I have Mox Opal, there's a chance I might only be taking 2 damage instead of the usual 4 to cast it. So definitely worth bringing in. Now, as for my opponent, I had a little peek at the end of the match, and he brought in 3 Fulminator Mages, and I must say I think 3 is a little too much, but I can understand why you'd want to bring it in. It's probably there to hit Inkmoth Nexus, which is one of the more subtle and unpredictable win conditions of my deck, so being prepared against it is good. And Inkmoth is not the only target, although I do think it's the best. He could also hit Ruins of Oran Reef, Pendlehaven, Phyrexia's Core, and any other non-basic lands that you may be running, but Inkmoth is definitely the right target. He also brought in 2 copies of Terminate, so removal is just great against my deck. More of it is even better. But this particular removal spell includes Cannot Be Regenerated in its text box, which really hurts my deck because I run 3 mainboard Welding Jars. He also brought in just 1 copy of Ancient Grudge, so that must be all he has in his sideboard, because I imagine he would bring in as many copies as he had. And this one's obvious. It's probably in his sideboard specifically for decks like mine, if not my deck in particular. Definitely coming in. And last but not least, I noticed he brought in a single copy of Liliana of the Last Hope. At least I think he did. Most of his deck is all foreigned out, and I can only read the name of the card and the CMC, and it looked like a foreign word for Liliana of the Last Hope. It would make sense if he brought that in. It's plus ability. It gives -2/-1 to target creature. Really good against my deck if I don't have a Steel Overseer or Hardened Scales, that is. Without those 2 cards, my entire deck is pretty much X1s, so -2/-1 is quite good. And I think that about wraps it up for the sideboarding. So let's jump back into game 2. It has to go better than game 1, right? So we'll see what happens. Well, take 2, here we go. It couldn't possibly be any worse than game 1. The only direction to go is up. So yeah, I can already see at least a forest in my hand, so it's a bajillion times better than game 1. On the play, too. Straight into an Ancient Stirrings. Let's see. Wow. Without looking at my hand, this early in the game, it's kind of hard to say. I'm usually not very tempted by Throne of Geth. There's a chance it's Mox Opal, but I'm probably... Yeah, I was gonna say it's probably one of the 2 creatures, Arcbound Ravager or Walking Ballista. Depends on what's in my hand. I must already have a Walking Ballista, or... I mean, an early Ballista isn't as relevant in this matchup, not like it is against... I'm not sure. Let's say Elves. An early Walking Ballista against Elves is probably essential. But Hangerback Walker for 1. End step, my opponent will fetch. No shock. Okay. So the Hangerback's gonna live. At least for a while. Putting that Hardened Scales onto the bottom of my library. From that initial Ancient Stirrings. That always feels bad. Terminate. Yeah, that's probably why I chose to play that. If I had only played the Ravager, Terminate would have felt awful. But now that I have the 1/1, I can play the Ravager. Having more than one creature makes removal not feel so bad with Arcbound Ravager on the field. Yeah, that makes sense. Knowing his deck, he could easily just go like Fatal Push, Lightning Bolt, and have pieces of removal for both. But if that's the case, then I'm making him use his removal pretty quickly, pretty early. It wouldn't feel good, but there would be a silver lining of sorts. Let's see, I think I can see more Hangerback Walkers. A Dismember, one of my sideboarded cards. So just slowly chipping away. I feel like usually Jund has a Scavenging Ooze or something similar to block with at this point. Oh, okay, so with Hardened Scales on the stack, destroy the Arcbound Ravager. Seems good. Yeah, I'm not sure how clearly it shows up on the camera, but most of my opponent's deck is completely foreign. It looks like mostly Japanese, some Chinese, some Russian. I could be totally wrong about exactly which languages, but I remember thinking just how cool it was. I love foreign cards. In Modern, I am drawn to foils for whatever reason, but in Pauper, I have a couple of Japanese Pauper decks that I really enjoy. Bloodbraid Elf. Ooh, spin that wheel. Into a Terminate. Yowzes. Yeah, that's pretty good. That dice on my side of the battlefield means nothing. It just fell off the Ravager. Ouch, man. Ouch, ouch, ouch. At least I have Hardened Scales as part of the rebuilding. And 3 mana. That's a lot better. And he stepped out right now, so I kind of have a free pass. It's like, whatever I can do, now is the time. What would I like to see? If I'm Walking Ballista right now, okay, we'll hang it back for 1, instead it's 2. Actually, I think I like that better than Walking Ballista, because Walking Ballista would leave the board completely empty. This way I can trade, and instead of being empty, I still have 2 flyers. Yeah. I'm wondering if that was right to offer the trade on my opponent's part. It depends on what's in his hand. Scooz is pretty good. See, how many green sources does he have? It looks like 3 total. 2 of them are currently untapped. Yeah. I've got at least a couple of creatures in my yard. Arcbound Ravager and the Hangerback Walker. Darn, darn, darn. Scooz can be so annoying. Nice though, another Ravager. 2 instead of 1 because of Hardened Scales. It's really important to have a sack outlet in this deck. Like right now, there's no Hangerback Walker on the battlefield. Ooh. Steel Overseer is good too. But if there was a Hangerback Walker, having a way to sacrifice it and turn it into flyers would be really important. A lot of my games come down to that. It's like, I'm losing to these spirits flying in the air, or these Mantis Riders, whatever it is, and I have 3 Hangerback Walkers on the ground that I can't do anything with. So, seeing an Arcbound Ravager come down feels good. Make me discard the Ballista. That's pretty sad. I would have ballisted for 2, but instead 3. Put a counter on it. 4/5. Kill the Scooz. Yeah, that would have been really sweet. Oh well. What to do now? He's going to be gaining a consistent amount of life for a while until the graveyard is completely consumed. Yeah, let's keep getting in the air. So that's 1, 2, and then add 2 counters to each one. So 3, 4, 5, 6. Interesting line. So the Blink Moth and the Ink Moth get the counters, but I didn't activate them in such a way where they would swing. Seems like him taking 9 instead of him taking 6 would have been really good. This is from the same evening that I played against the Classic Affinity, and I was still new on this deck. Rewatching these videos now with like a week or two of more practice, I look back and I think, what was I doing? It certainly seems like it would have been right to tap the Darksteel Citadel, activate the Blinkmoth Nexus, and get in for an extra 3. Especially with him just gaining the life right back off of Scoos. Ooh boy. 4 mana. Okay, spin that wheel again. Lightning Bolt. Send it to the Steel Overseer. So I have a choice of sacrificing the Archbound Ravager just to put his counters there. But no. He has one more card in hand. I could get blown out. And keeping the Ravager, it's like I could win with Infect. It's looking really good right now. I have lots of different choices. And he has only one removal spell. But the potential for one removal spell. It looks like he only has one card in hand. Yeah, so that's 9. Present lethal. Check for removal. Okay, gotcha. Whew. Well, sometimes when I just get totally screwed in game 1, I have this gut feeling that things are gonna go my way in game 2. So I can't count my chickens before they hatch, of course. But that was a much better game, and I'm looking forward to game 3.
Welcome back to game 3.
Excuse me. Well, it looks like we are both on a mold of 6. My opponent's guys to the top, and myself to the bottom. Although Blood Crypt tapped and pass is what I like to see. No hand reception, he's not holding up removal. Animation module, so it may not be the namesake card of the deck, although I think some of the more interesting and busted interactions take place with animation module, not necessarily just hardened scales. So here's a good example. Arcbound Worker, it resolves, so just the 1 counter, and then I'll also make another 1/1. Incredible against the deck that specializes in like 1-for-1 removal. If every one of my creatures is actually 2, I'm just gonna soar above and beyond what he's able to remove. Now, of course, not every single one of my creatures is gonna work well with animation module, but a lot of them do. And if I get a Steel Overseer, it's like bonkers. Wow. Terminate into Dreadbore. Although that was a 2-mana removal spell just targeting a token that I paid 1 mana for. So I guess I'm okay with that. Rinse, wash, and repeat. This time with a Welding Jar on the battlefield. I have a feeling I won't be tempted to use the Welding Jar on either of these creatures. It's not like I'm saving a Steel Overseer, which is what I would, I could wait to pop the Welding Jar until I draw a good creature, or I potentially could use it to save something small. I guess it depends on the situation. Oh, 2 Welding Jars. I still shouldn't waste one, but I might be more inclined to use one now. Swing for 2. With Pendlehaven, I'm threading making it 3. Ooh, so Abrupt Decay, the Arcbound Worker. Oh, I remember this. This was a mistake. So I already know I'm going to put the counter over to the token. So I Pendlehaven first, and that was a mistake. Look, his other removal spell was a Lightning Bolt. So if I put the counter over there, it's only foreseeably going to be a 2/2. He lets that resolve. He casts Lightning Bolt at my end step, or before damage, rather, and then I Pendlehaven, and I come out on top. It's possible he would have seen that coming, and it still wouldn't have worked out in my favor. But it's also possible I wouldn't have had to use a Welding Jar. So, making one more servo. It was kind of hard to communicate that for whatever reason. but one more servo off the Arcbound Workers counter being moved. So this is certainly looking good. Not great, but a lot better now with the Ravager. Yikes, Ancient Grudge. The best sideboard card against my deck. Well, short of like, I don't know, Damnation or Board Wipe or something. Out of all the board wipes, Damnation is the most relevant, because it includes the text "cannot be regenerated," and against a deck with like 3 copies of Welding Jar, the can't be regenerated thing is pretty brutal. And it's also why Terminate is so damn good. Scavenging Ooze. Not again. It's a really annoying card. Looks like this time he only has 2 green sources, and right now they're both tapped. So I use Pendlehaven the correct way there. Swing, holding up Pendlehaven. He doesn't block because he doesn't want to lose his dude. Doesn't want to chump with it needlessly. And then second main phase, I can use both mana for a Ravager. If I had played Ravager first main phase, well, I guess because it's Ravager, he probably still wouldn't have blocked. But holding up Pendlehaven and threading the Pendlehaven definitely was the right play there. But this Scavenging Ooze is going to get annoying pretty soon. I have a feeling it'll start activating its ability and start creeping back up in life. Although I just talked over the Fulminator Mage hitting my Pendlehaven, that's pretty brutal. Well, thankfully I drew another land. Although I must say, I would prefer to be at 3 right now instead of 2. I've been noticing that Hangerback Walker in my hand. And if I had the 3 mana, yeah, see, there we go. I'm even playing it. If I had an extra mana, I could Hangerback Walker for 1 and afford to pay for the animation module trigger to make another servo. And that would just be so good. So he takes 3, and then at end step he has a green source untapped. I imagine he'll eat something. Rather, he'll exile something with the Scavenging Ooze. Yeah, sure enough. I don't really have any graveyard interaction, but I think he does. So he's going to prefer to eat my entire graveyard first, all my creatures, before he moves on to his own. Swing 3. I am not really worried about dying particularly soon. My only blocker is a Hangerback Walker on 1, and I would want to wait until I had a lot more counters than that to block. Oh, snap though. Tarmogoyf. Well, I noticed that Dismember in my hand, like, forever ago. It may come up, or it may come in handy soon. So, I don't really have any... I mean, like, what am I... I would like to draw Hardened Scales. I'm thinking, like, what do I want to see off the top of my library? Hardened Scales would definitely be nice. Ooh, a 3rd land, actually. That's not bad. Put a counter on it. I don't have any flyers. He's a giant 5/6 on the ground. Although, with a Dismember in hand, I may get ballsy here. Okay, pay for the animation module trigger. I have a feeling. Well, it's certainly a line, anyways. To swing out, he's gonna block one of them. He'll take at least 1 damage. The Tarmogoyf will, and then I can give it -5/-5, taking care of that Tarmogoyf permanently. Yeah, don't give him the Arcbound. That just seems wrong. Oh, he smells a trick. Yeah, that's way too, it's a pretty hard tell, just to swing like that.
What could it mean?
but the mana is still open, and I still have a 1/1 that's not Arcbound Ravager to block with. So the same trick could still work during his combat phase, even if it didn't work during my own. I would still like to see a Hardened Scales. It would make my Arcbound Ravager a lot more threatening. Interesting. So in response, I sacked my Hangerback Walker. I guess that's as good a time as any to do it, if I was planning on doing it this turn. I mean, having flyers that aren't summoning sick, like if I had sacked it at his instep just so I have flyers to swing with next turn, that makes sense. So now, no, I hope I don't use that mana. That's my dismember mana. Okay, yeah, that's what I decided to do. So I can't sack it to Ravager or else it won't deal its damage. It kind of looks like a misplay there. I think when I first watched this video during the editing, I thought, what the hell am I doing? But it has to die to deal its damage for Dismember to work. I'm not even sure if I should have been so concerned about Goyf. I mean, taking 4 damage one time is better than having to deal with 5 damage every turn. Maybe that was the right play. Okay, now we're talking. Hardened Scales on the battlefield. He has 1 card in hand. See, I've learned my lesson as far as jumping through hoops and sacking my whole board. I'm scared to do it if my opponent has even 1 card in mana untapped. But with my Welding Jar on the battlefield, I don't know why I'm so afraid. I mean, it could be a Terminate, can't be regenerated. Something just horrible like that, and I sack my whole board and get blown out. It's like, I don't blame myself for not going for the win here. But at the same time, it's kind of painful to watch. Like, look, I just did 2 damage, and at my end step, he's going to exile 2 creatures and gain 2 life. So it's like, well, I really don't know. Having the Arcbound Ravager able to respond to what he does is powerful. But if I act first and I start sacking everything and then he is able to respond on top of the stack with a Terminate, can't be regenerated, I'm probably going to lose this game. So I still think that I was right in playing so cautiously. Block, sack before damage. Oh, and then because counters are being put on a permanent I control, pay to make another servo. Yeesh. If that Phyrexia's core was the Ruins of Oran Reef, I could even have put a counter on it again. So just like chump with a 2/2, get 2 counters on the Arcbound Ravager, make another 2/2. It was almost that good. Okay, Surgical Extraction. Now I can peek at his hand. Judge. Naming Lightning Bolt. I have to choose something. And I think that was the most relevant removal spell in his graveyard. Or I don't know. I had to choose something. I really just wanted to see what was in his hand. Yeah, the Japanese Rakdos Charm. I think I asked for a second time. What does that do? Man, oh man. So now I know what's in his hand. He has 1 removal spell that cannot regenerate. And I have a Welding Jar. So I think I'm in the clear at this point. Swing out, present lethal, wait for him to block something, and then Welding Jar. At this point, we're one of the last matches still playing. and there's a bit of a crowd gathered around us. And I think, some people might enjoy that. Some people might be indifferent, but there are definitely those that don't enjoy being watched by a big crowd. I may be one of those people, says the guy with the YouTube channel. But I think that my opponent was, and he was suffering a little bit from the social situation at the end. I don't know. He was a really good guy. I feel for him. If you don't like everyone watching, and there are people watching. And this part was kind of weird while I was editing. It's like I have presented him with way more than lethal. Yet here I am counting. I think I'm counting up how many creatures are in his yard, and how many green sources he has, like how much life can he gain. But it doesn't quite add up. There must have been a disparagement in life totals between what we thought the life totals were on the day and what I thought they were after editing. And I've gone back and I've looked, and I think that at one point there was a big complicated turn and we forgot to write down that he had taken 3 damage. I think. So we are assuming that he's at 10 here, with the ability to gain like 2 life from the skews. So I have to sack and make it 12 to present lethal. So 1, 2, so that now, I think now, in game, we've established that I'm swinging for lethal. Rectus Charm, save it. Yep. Well, wow, what a close match, actually. At one point, with his 5/6 Charmergoyf and his Scavenging Ooze with 3 or 4 counters on it, it was not looking good for me. But a late game Hardened Scales certainly helped me stabilize, and ended up getting there. So I had a whole lot of fun playing this match, and if you guys enjoy content like this, you can let me know in the comments below, or even more importantly, by hitting that subscribe button. So, as usual, thank you guys for watching, and until next time, I'll see you later.